You want your two bobs worth as well. What are the issues affecting you in this election campaign? What is going to determine your vote, or what has determined the way you voted? 0487 99 1057. Now, as I said before, the CLP have never won the seat in its current form as Lingiari since 2001. Damien Ryan took a big bite out of the margins for Labor, of course, with Warren Snowden resigning at the last election. So what does it look like for the CLP and Marion Scrimgeour's main opponent, Lisa Siebert? She's a Larrakia woman who hails from Darwin and Gunbalanya. Ms Siebert served with the AFP for more than 16 years, 3 of those years here in Alice Springs. So what are her chances of wresting this seat from Labor?
Look, I was born in the Territory. I grew up in the community. I did live in Alice Springs for 3 years. I actually worked there as part of my role in the Australian Federal Police. That was quite some time ago. The kids went to school there. Look, I've known the Territory. I've lived in Jabiru as well. The interest in the experience, rather, in the mining industry, aviation, policing, obviously, community. I ran a youth centre here in Gunbalanya. So we've done a lot of community work, sporting also. It may not be well known. That would be for the fact that I was working 17 years for the Australian Federal Police. So my remit was quite small in terms of community. People in the community that I've worked with and know me very well. I've had enough of what's been happening in the Territory, and as others I've been to on the ground locally, they have seen nil change and are really screaming for the change in the Territory.
Let's look at the key issues. Now, I saw you talking in the Tiwis the other day. You were talking about housing and jobs, community safety. You've also talked about crime. What do you see as the key issues in this election for Lingiari?
So it's certainly the crime and the cost of living. Cost of living, particularly for the people living out in the remote bush areas. Their cost of fuel is through the roof. Their cost of living, as we know, it's the groceries hitting the supermarket shelves is just really, really expensive. Any produce goods, as we know, when it comes to road freight, transport and all the rest of it, the costs increase when it's coming to the consumers, and by the time it's hitting the supermarkets, to the time when the consumers are paying for their goods.
I know fuel, because the coalition said there'll be a 25% cut to fuel excise, but that key point about the cost of goods, if you buy a basket of goods in a community store, it's twice what you'll pay in, say, Alice Springs or a city. Labor said they will make 30 items in community shops the same price as city prices. Do you support that idea?
I support that idea for sure, but I don't think it's going to work. It needs to be broadly right across the Territory, and selecting 30 items is just not going to work. It needs to be right across the Territory, and like I said, it's the freight costs that's a killer.
So you don't think the government should subsidise the items, so what should they do?
Well, we need to be looking at freight costs, our freight subsidies.
Is that an official CLP policy you're taking, that there'll be freight subsidies for bush communities?
No, that is still under discussion, Brashy. We had a round table with in Alice Springs last week or so, and we were discussing exactly that with industries and the freight and transport companies, and we're still yet to find our position in relation to that.
Crime is a NT government responsibility. What can you do? If you're the local member for Lingiari, part of a coalition government, what would you or could you do to tackle crime in the Territory?
Certainly. Excellent question. What I would like to see happen is what we need to be doing, and what I will be doing if elected, we'll be working very closely with the NT government. And what we need to be doing is supporting them with early intervention and rehabilitation. That's what I'm very passionate about as well. So that's what I'll be working very closely with Leah and the parliamentary team to ensure that we can tackle the crime on the ground, because without the support of the federal government, I know it's an NT government issue, but we need to be backing the NT government, whatever political faction we are, is to come to solutions to work how we're going to tackle this crime issue.
Let's talk about jobs. Now, there's 17,000 people, Indigenous Territorians and CDP. Labor says they're going to bring in a remote jobs plan with 3,000 jobs over the next 3 years. Real jobs, they say. What's your plan to get people in remote communities back and working? What is the plan?
Well, we need the infrastructure first and foremost. We need to create the job opportunities for them.
CDP was brought in but then disbanded in many ways by the former coalition government. What would work? What's the plan for remote communities?
Well, they actually need real jobs. CDP, they do not want CDP. Some of them want CDP and some of them don't.
But there's surely not enough real jobs in remote communities, is there?
No, that's exactly right. We need to get them back into, fixing their houses, training them. There's so much. They're all very, very clever. They've got skills. They can work. They can drive machinery. They can drive trucks. They're not being provided the job opportunities to work. There's so much that they can be doing.
The NT gets $5 in the GST dollar on the basis of Aboriginal disadvantage. Your party has called for auditing of Aboriginal money and programs. What about auditing the Northern Territory government? Because they are a big provider. They get a lot of money to provide services. Do they need to be audited as well for their performance?
100% agree with that. If we're going to be audited, everyone needs to be audited.
Okay, so all the other bodies, but you're happy for the Northern Territory government to be audited for their delivery of services as well?
No, I think it's unfair if we're not. We all need to be accountable.
It's a very tight margin, though. It has increased slightly with the redistribution of the seat and the removal of the Palmerston suburbs into Solomon. We're told it's 1.7 margin to Labor. What level of confidence do you have that you can win this seat?
Look, people want change, Brashy, and Labor, Liberal, whatever government, deliver where they deliver. But there's a change now in this electorate. They're sick of all the promises. They're sick of seeing nothing being delivered. Problem
is, of course, you're just another potential politician. You are one voice in a government. The Northern Territory is a tiny part of the Australia, 1% of the population. What difference would you make?
Yeah, what I can promise is that I'll be fighting, if elected, very, very hard for the Territory. I need to work with the three tiers of government, and that's exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be working alongside who forms the government, working with the NT government, your local councils and people on the ground, people within the communities, and that's who I'll be fighting for. I will be fighting for the constituents of Lingiari, Territorian.
Lisa Siebert, the CLP candidate for the seat of Lingiari.